When I entered the bedroom, I saw my grandson take my cigars, pour some whiskey into a glass, and was about to drink it and light a cigar. He had his back to me and didn't notice that I was the one entering the room. He said, "Baby, put the delivery in the kitchen and take the tip from the coffee table in the room." When he turned around and saw me, he dropped the glass on the floor and said, "Yeah, Grandpa, I think you got me. This story is going to shake you to your core. It is a story about the lengths family will go to for money and the devastating realization that the people we love might be strangers. If you appreciate stories where the truth finally comes out, no matter how painful, please subscribe to the channel and like this video." My name is Charles Stockman. I am 72 years old, and for the last decade, I have existed as a ghost. I was a phantom who lived in the blistering heat of Riyadh, in the glass towers of Dubai, and on the oil fields of Texas. I was a man made of wire transfers and emails. I was a voice on a phone line that crackled with static, trying to bridge the thousands of miles between myself and the only two people on this earth who mattered to me, my daughter Linda and my grandson Timothy. I worked. God, how I worked. I missed the birth. I was stuck in a boardroom in Qatar, negotiating a pipeline deal that would secure my family's future for 3 generations, while my daughter was in a delivery room in Chicago. I remember the guilt. It was a physical weight, heavier than the humidity of the Gulf. Linda told me it was okay. She told me she understood. She sent me a picture of a bundle of blue blankets. The photo was blurry, taken from a distance in the hospital nursery. She said the nurses were strict about photography. I taped that printed photo to the wall of my office. It was my North Star. For 10 years, that was the pattern. I sent money. Linda sent updates. I bought a house in the suburbs for them, a sprawling 5-bedroom colonial that cost me more than I care to admit. I paid for private schools. I paid for tutors. I paid for medical specialists because Linda told me Timothy was fragile. She said he had severe social anxiety. She said he had allergies to sunlight, to pollen, to certain fabrics. She said he was on the spectrum. She painted a picture of a boy who was brilliant but broken, a boy who needed the world to be padded and soft around him. And I paid for the padding. I retired 2 weeks ago. I walked away from the contracts, the stress, and the heat. I cashed out. I came home with a net worth that would make a banker blush, but my pockets felt empty because I had no memories. I had missed the first steps, the first words, the first day of school. I came home determined to spend the rest of my life making up for the time I had sold. The reunion at the airport was strange. I expected tears. I expected a scene from a movie. Instead, Linda met me at the baggage claim with a tight smile and shifting eyes. She looked older, harder. The softness I remembered in my little girl was gone, replaced by a nervous, brittle energy. She hugged me, but her body was stiff. She kept checking her watch. She kept checking the exit. "Where is he?" I asked, my heart hammering in my chest. "Where is Timothy?" "He's in the car," Linda said, her voice high and breathless. "He's having a bad day, Dad. The crowds, the noise, it's too much for him. You have to be patient. Please, just be patient." I swallowed my disappointment. Of course. The anxiety. I followed her to the car, a luxury SUV I had paid for. In the back seat, huddled in the corner, was a small figure. He was wearing a thick, oversized gray hoodie with the hood pulled down low over his face. He wore dark wraparound sunglasses. He had headphones on. He looked small, frail. "Timothy?" I said softly, opening the door. "It's Grandpa." The figure didn't move. Linda leaned in. "Timothy, take off the headphones. Grandpa is here." He slid the headphones down. He didn't look at me. He looked at his knees. "Hi, Grandpa," he mumbled. The voice was raspy, weak, like he had a sore throat. I reached out to touch his shoulder, and he flinched violently, shrinking away from me against the leather seat. "Don't!" Linda snapped, grabbing my wrist. "Sorry, Dad. He has sensory processing issues." Sudden touch hurts him. You have to give him space. I pulled my hand back. I felt like a monster. Here I was, the stranger crashing into his delicate world. I sat in the front seat, staring out the window as we drove to the house I bought, feeling a profound sense of failure. The first week was a nightmare of eggshells. I lived in the guest suite of my own house. I barely saw Timothy. He stayed in his room, the curtains drawn, the blue light of a television flickering under the door. Linda hovered constantly. If I tried to knock on his door, she would appear from nowhere. "Not now, Dad. He's doing his breathing exercises." "Not now, Dad. He's having a telehealth appointment." I started to feel like an intruder. I also started to feel suspicious. Not of the boy, but of the situation. Why was he so isolated? Linda said he was homeschooled, but I never saw a tutor. I never saw books. I just saw the closed door. I decided I needed to force a connection. I was the grandfather. I was the patriarch. I couldn't let this boy wither away in the dark. I proposed a trip, my lake house in Wisconsin. It was quiet, secluded, surrounded by nature. No crowds, no noise, just the two of us. Linda panicked. She came up with a dozen excuses. The pollen count, the lack of internet, the distance from his doctors. I cut her off. "Linda," I said, my voice firm, "I have been away for 10 years. I am taking my grandson fishing. We will be gone for 1 week. Pack his bags." She looked at me with genuine fear in her eyes. It wasn't concern for her son. It was the look of a person who is losing control of a narrative. But she knew she couldn't refuse me. I controlled the finances. I controlled the deed to the house she lived in. She agreed, but she gave me a suitcase that looked like a mobile pharmacy. Pills for anxiety, pills for digestion, creams for his skin. She gave me a typed list of rules 3 pages long. Rule number 1, do not make him remove his sunglasses or hoodie. It is his safety armor. We drove up to the lake on a Tuesday. The drive was silent. Timothy sat in the back, headphones on, hood up. I tried to make conversation. I talked about the desert. I talked about the oil rigs. He gave one-word answers. "Yeah, okay, cool." When we got to the cabin, the atmosphere was oppressive. The cabin was a beautiful place, a log structure overlooking a pristine, glass-like lake. It smelled of pine and cedar. It should have been a paradise for a 10-year-old boy. Timothy acted like it was a prison. For 3 days, we existed in the same space, but in different worlds. He sat on the couch, playing a handheld video game console with a ferocity that seemed odd. His thumbs moved with lightning speed. He didn't play like a child exploring a game. He played with the bored efficiency of someone killing time in a waiting room. There were little things that didn't add up. On the second night, I made spaghetti. I put a plate in front of him. He pushed it around with his fork. "I don't like red sauce," he mumbled. Linda had never mentioned that. "What do you like?" I asked. "Do you have any kimchi? Or maybe some sharp cheddar and crackers?" It was a strange request for a 10-year-old who supposedly lived on chicken nuggets and buttered noodles, according to Linda. I found some cheese. He ate it with a strange, delicate precision. Then there was the vocabulary. On the third morning, a bird crashed into the window. Timothy looked up from his game. "Probable trajectory error due to the reflection," he muttered. I froze. "What did you say?" He seemed to catch himself. He slumped back into his hoodie. I said, "Stupid bird." I went to bed that night feeling a knot in my stomach. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that kids these days were different, that the internet made them speak like adults, that his condition made him eccentric. But the feeling that something was wrong, fundamentally, structurally wrong, would not go away. The 4th day was the turning point, the day the veil was ripped away. I decided we needed a steak dinner, a proper meal. I wanted to grill. I told Timothy I was going into town to the butcher shop. It was a 40-minute drive each way. "You'll be okay here?" I asked. He didn't look up from his game. "Yeah, whatever." I got in my car and drove. The road winded through the dense forest. My mind was racing. I was thinking about the will I had written before I left. Everything went to Linda, in trust for Timothy. Millions of dollars. I was thinking about the disconnect between the boy in my cabin and the boy in the emails. I reached the town limits and realized I had left my wallet on the kitchen counter. I cursed aloud. I turned the car around. I drove back fast. I didn't drive recklessly, but I pushed the speed limit. I wanted to get back, get the wallet, and get the errand over with. I pulled into the gravel driveway. The cabin was silent. The birds were singing. The lake was lapping against the dock. It was peaceful. I walked up the steps. The front door was unlocked. I stepped inside. "Timothy?" I called out. Silence. I walked toward the kitchen to grab my wallet. It was there. But then I heard a sound coming from the master bedroom. My bedroom. It was the clink of glass against glass. I frowned. I walked down the hallway. The door was ajar. I pushed it open gently. The scene that greeted me was so absurd, so impossible, that my brain refused to process it for a full 5 seconds. The boy, Timothy, was standing by my dresser. But he wasn't the boy I knew. The hoodie was gone. He was wearing a tight white t-shirt that revealed arms that were small, yes, but muscular. Veiny. The arms of a man, not a child. The sunglasses were on the bed. He was holding one of my Cohiba cigars, biting the end off with a practiced motion. In his other hand, he held my crystal decanter of 50-year-old Scotch. He was pouring a generous amount into a tumbler. He wasn't slouching. His spine was straight. He rolled his neck, cracking the vertebrae, a gesture of weary relief. He had his back to me. He picked up the glass, swirled the amber liquid, and took a sip. He sighed, a deep, guttural sound of satisfaction. Then he spoke. And the voice? Dear God, the voice. It wasn't the raspy whisper. It was a deep, resonant baritone, a smoker's voice. A voice that had ordered drinks in dive bars and shouted over construction noise. "Baby," he said to the empty room. Assuming the sound of the door was the delivery girl he must have ordered on an app. "Put the delivery in the kitchen and take the tip from the coffee table." He took another sip of whiskey. I couldn't breathe. I stood there, my hand gripping the doorframe, my knuckles white. The floorboard under my foot gave a sharp, high-pitched creak. He froze. Slowly he turned around. The face I saw was the face of a nightmare. It was Timothy's face, but it wasn't. Without the glasses, I saw the crow's feet around the eyes. I saw the dark circles of exhaustion. I saw the faint shadow of a 5 o'clock shadow that had been meticulously shaved but was now showing through. I saw the eyes, cynical, hard, dead eyes. He looked at me. He looked at the cigar. He looked at the whiskey. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. His expression shifted from shock to a sort of resigned amusement. He opened his hand. The crystal glass fell. It hit the hardwood floor and shattered, sending shards of glass and expensive scotch flying across the room. "Yeah, Grandpa," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I think you got me. Now, before I tell you what happened next, I need you to understand something. In that moment, the world didn't just shift. It broke. Imagine looking at the sun and realizing it's a light bulb. Imagine looking at your own hand and realizing it's made of plastic. The fundamental reality of my life, that I was a grandfather, that I had a legacy, evaporated in the smell of spilled whiskey and unlit tobacco. I walked into the room. My boots crunched on the broken glass. I didn't care. I walked over to the leather armchair in the corner and sat down. My legs wouldn't have held me up much longer. "Who are you?" I asked. My voice was frighteningly calm. It sounded like someone else was speaking. The man, because he was a man, sighed. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a gold Zippo lighter, and lit the cigar. He took a long drag, blew a perfect smoke ring toward the ceiling, and sat down on the edge of the bed, swinging his short legs. "Name's Rick," he said. "Rick Solver." "How old are you, Rick?" 32 next month. 32. He was older than some of the engineers I managed in Dubai. He looked 11. "Explain," I said. One word. It was all I could manage. Rick shrugged. He looked at the cigar, admiring the ash. "It's a condition, panhypopituitarism, combined with a few other genetic quirks. Basically, my pituitary gland went on strike when I was 10. I stopped growing. My bones fused, but they didn't lengthen. My face, it just kind of froze. I have to shave twice a day to keep the skin smooth. I wear lifts in my shoes sometimes, but not on this gig." "This gig," I repeated. "Yeah, the gig. Your daughter, Linda." "She's a piece of work, Charles. Can I call you Charles? Grandpa feels a little weird now, don't you think?" He took another drink, straight from the decanter this time. "She found me through a casting agency in Chicago. Specialty talent. Usually I do stand-in work for child actors. You know, when the kid reaches his labor law hours, I step in so they can light the scene. Sometimes I do stunts. Sometimes I do this." "Do what?" I asked. "Impersonate non-existent children?" "You'd be surprised," Rick said with a dry chuckle. "Rich families with inheritance disputes, custody battles. I've been a son, a nephew, a witness to a crime once. But this was a long con." "How long?" Rick looked at me, and for a second I saw a flicker of pity in his eyes. "Not long for me. I've been on the payroll for 3 weeks. But the lie has been going on for 10 years, Charles." I felt the blood drain from my face. "She never had a son, did she?" Rick shook his head. "Nope. She got pregnant right after you left. Miscarried at 3 months. But she didn't want to tell you. You were talking about legacy and future and sending those big checks. She figured if she told you there was no baby, the checks would stop. So she sent a picture of a random baby. Then she kept it up. Fake report cards, fake medical bills." I closed my eyes. The medical bills. The $50,000 for the experimental treatment in Switzerland. The $20,000 for the private asthma clinic. "I bought her a boat with that money," Rick said, answering my unspoken thought. "And a condo in Cabo. And that SUV she drives. And when I said I was coming home," I whispered. "Panic mode," Rick said. "She couldn't kill off the imaginary kid. That would be too suspicious, and you'd want to visit the grave. So she hired me. The script was simple. I'm shy, I'm sick, I have anxiety. Keep the hoodie on, keep the glasses on, don't talk much. We figured you'd stay for a month, get bored of the moody kid, and go back to building bridges or whatever you do. She pays me $2,000 a week plus expenses. $2,000 a week. To play my grandson." I looked at this man, this 32-year-old stranger smoking my cigar in my bedroom. I should have hated him. I should have wanted to strangle him. But I didn't. I hated myself. I hated my blindness. And I hated Linda with a cold, glacial fury that frightened me. Rick stood up. "Look, man, I'm sorry. Usually the marks are jerks. You seem like a decent guy. But a job is a job." He moved toward his suitcase. "I assume I'm fired. I'll call an Uber." "Wait," I said. Rick stopped. "How much to finish the week?" I asked. He frowned. "What?" "I want to hire you," I said. I stood up. I walked over to him. "I want to hire you for one last performance." Rick looked at me suspiciously. "What kind of performance?" "We are going to drive back to Linda's house," I said, "and we are going to teach her a lesson she will never forget." Rick studied my face. He saw the anger there, but he also saw the calculation. He grinned, revealing teeth that were stained with tobacco. Teeth no 10-year-old should have. "I'm listening," he said. We spent the next hour packing. It was a surreal experience. Rick didn't bother with the hoodie. He put on a leather jacket, a pair of faded jeans, and a baseball cap worn backward. He moved like a man. He packed with efficiency. We walked out to the car, my pride and joy, a 1969 Chevelle SS Black with white racing stripes. I had restored it myself before I left the country. It was loud, aggressive, and fast. I tossed the keys to Rick. "You know how to handle a big block V8?" I asked. Rick caught the keys in one hand. "Charles, I used to drive getaway cars for low-budget heist movies. I can handle the Chevelle." He climbed into the driver's seat. He had to slide the seat forward, but his hands gripped the wheel with confidence. I got in the passenger side. The drive back was 3 hours of revelation. We talked, man to man. "So, what's it like?" I asked. "Looking like that?" "It's hell, mostly," Rick admitted, shifting gears smoothly as we merged onto the highway. "Can't buy a beer without 3 forms of ID and a manager called. Can't date women my age because they feel like creeps. Can't get respect. That's why I do the con work. When I'm playing a role, I'm in control." I nodded. I told him about the desert, about the loneliness, about how I worked 18-hour days to avoid thinking about how much I missed my family. "She played us both," Rick said. "She used my face and your money." "Yeah," I said. "She did." I spent the second half of the drive on the phone. I called my lawyer, Mr. Henderson. He was an old friend, a shark in a suit. "Charles?" he asked. "Is everything okay?" "No, Frank, it's not. I need you to draft a new will immediately." "Okay. What are the changes?" "I want Linda out. Completely. Not a dime. Not a property. Nothing." "Charles, that's drastic. Did something happen?" "Everything happened, Frank. Also, I need you to look at the deed for the house she's living in. It's in my name, correct?" "Yes. It's in your revocable trust." "Revoke it." "I want an eviction notice prepared. 30 days. Jesus, Charles. Just do it, Frank. And liquidate the college fund. All of it. Transfer it to my personal checking." I hung up. I looked at Rick. He was smoking a cigarette with the window down, the wind tearing at his face. He looked over at me and nodded. We hit the city limits as the sun was starting to set. The sky was a bruised purple. It felt appropriate. When we turned onto Linda's street, a street of manicured lawns and perfect facades, my heart began to pound. Not from fear, but from adrenaline. This was the final project. The demolition. "I want you to make noise," I told Rick. "You got it." Rick downshifted. The engine roared. He floored the accelerator and the tires chirped. The Chevelle screamed down the quiet suburban street, the exhaust echoing off the houses. It sounded like a war zone. We skidded into the driveway. Rick revved the engine, a rhythmic, guttural growl that shook the windows of the house. The front door flew open almost immediately. Linda came running out. She was wearing a silk bathrobe, her hair messy. She looked frantic. She must have thought I had crashed the car, or that I was having a heart attack. She ran halfway down the driveway and stopped. She saw the car. She saw me in the passenger seat. And then her eyes locked on the driver. From where she stood, she saw a 10-year-old boy sitting behind the wheel of a muscle car. Her hands flew to her mouth. She started screaming. "Dad, are you insane? Get him out of there! He's a baby! What are you doing?" She ran toward the car, her face twisted in a mask of performative horror. "You've lost your mind! I'm calling the police! Timothy! Timothy, get out of the car right now!" Rick looked at me. His hand was on the key. "Kill it," I said. The engine died. The sudden silence was deafening. Linda reached the driver's side door. She yanked it open, tears streaming down her face. "Timothy! Oh my God, are you hurt? Did he force you to drive?" Rick sat there. He didn't look scared. He didn't look shy. He looked bored. He slowly unbuckled his seatbelt. He turned his body toward her. Linda was grabbing at his arms, checking him for injuries. "Timothy, speak to me!" Rick pulled his arm away. He reached into his leather jacket pocket. He pulled out a pack of Marlboro Reds. He tapped the pack against the steering wheel, packing the tobacco. Linda froze. Her hands hovered in the air. Her eyes went wide. What are you doing?" she whispered. Rick pulled a cigarette out with his lips. He produced the gold Zippo. Click. Whoosh. He lit the cigarette, inhaling deeply until the tip glowed cherry red. He turned his head and blew a thick cloud of blue smoke directly into my daughter's face. "Hey, Linda," Rick said. The voice was deep, gravelly, and utterly devoid of mercy. "The gig is up. The old man knows." Linda stumbled back. She looked like she had been slapped. She looked from Rick to the cigarette, then to me. Her face went pale, then gray. "Dad!" she croaked. I opened my door and stepped out. I felt heavy, solid. I walked around the hood of the car. The heat from the engine was radiating against my legs. I stood next to Rick, who had stepped out of the car and was leaning against the fender, smoking casually, one foot crossed over the other. I looked at my daughter. I looked for the little girl I had raised. I looked for the woman I had supported. I found neither. I saw a stranger, a parasite. "You told me he had social anxiety," I said. My voice was low, but it carried in the evening air. Neighbors were starting to come out onto their porches, drawn by the noise. "Dad, wait," Linda stammered, backing away toward the house. It's a misunderstanding. I can explain. You told me he needed $50,000 for a specialist in Zurich," I continued, taking a step forward. "You told me he was allergic to the sun. You told me he couldn't speak to strangers." I pointed at Rick. "This is Rick," I said. "He's a 32-year-old stuntman from Chicago. He's a nice guy. He drives a stick shift better than I do." "Dad, please!" Linda sobbed. She fell to her knees on the driveway. "I did it for us. I didn't want you to be alone. I didn't want to disappoint you." "Disappoint me?" I laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Linda, you didn't invent a son to make me happy. You invented a son to keep the checks clearing. You erased 10 years of my life. You let me love a ghost." "I did love him," she wailed. "In my own way." "You loved the money," I said. I looked at the house. My house. "The trust is revoked, Linda. The accounts are frozen. The will is being rewritten as we speak." "What?" She looked up, her mascara running down her cheeks. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you're evicted," I said. "You have 30 days. That's the legal minimum I have to give you. After that, the locks change." "But where will I go? I have nothing. I haven't worked in 10 years. "I don't know," I said. "You're young, you're healthy, you're creative, clearly. Get a job, write a book. I don't care." I turned to Rick. "Get your bag, Rick. I'll drive you to the station." Rick grabbed his duffel bag from the back seat. He took one last drag of his cigarette and flicked the butt onto the driveway, right next to Linda's knee. "Thanks for the ride, Charles," Rick said. He looked down at Linda. "Hey, Linda," he said. "You still owe me for this week. $2,000. But don't worry about it. Consider it a severance package." Rick got into the passenger seat. I got into the driver's side. Linda was screaming now. She was clawing at the air, begging, promising to change, promising to adopt a real child, promising anything. "Dad! Daddy, please! Don't leave me! I'm your daughter!" I looked at her through the glass. I felt a terrible pang of grief, but it wasn't for her. It was for the memory of who I thought she was. That person was dead. I put the car in reverse. I backed out of the driveway. Linda ran after the car, banging on the trunk, but I didn't stop. I shifted into first and drove away. I watched her in the rearview mirror. She stood in the middle of the road, a small, diminishing figure in a silk bathrobe, illuminated by the red glow of my taillights. Then I turned the corner, and she was gone. The drive to the train station was quiet. The adrenaline had faded, leaving a hollow exhaustion. Rick broke the silence. "You okay, Charles?" "I'll be okay," I said. "You know," Rick said, looking out the window, "if you ever need a grandson for a weekend, you know, just to go fishing or watch a game, I offer a discount for repeat customers." I smiled. It was a weak smile, but it was real. "I might take you up on that, Rick, but next time, bring your own cigars." We pulled up to the station. I handed him an envelope. Inside was $10,000 in cash. "That's too much," Rick said. "It's a tip," I said, "for the honesty. It's a rare commodity these days." He took it. He shook my hand. His grip was strong, rough. "Take care of yourself, Charles. You too, Rick." He walked into the station, his leather jacket swallowing his small frame. I watched him go until he disappeared into the crowd. I got back in my car. I was alone, truly alone. No daughter, no grandson, no legacy. I drove home, not to Linda's house, but to my lake cabin. It was dark when I arrived. The air was cold. I walked into the bedroom. The broken glass was still on the floor. The smell of whiskey was still in the air. I cleaned it up. I swept the glass into a dustpan. I wiped the floor. Then I poured myself a drink. I went out to the deck and looked at the lake. The moon was reflecting off the water. I took a sip. It burned, then warmed me. I had lost a family I never really had, but I had found the truth. And sitting there in the dark, with the silence of the woods around me, I realized that the truth, no matter how bitter, was better than the sweetest lie. I took another sip. "I think I'll go fishing tomorrow," I said to the empty night. And for the first time in 10 years, I wasn't waiting for an email. I wasn't waiting for a photo. I was just Charles. And that was going to have to be enough.
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales like this, hit subscribe.